What's up, everybody? The time has come to talk about what might just be Tom Cruise's final outing as Ethan Hunt. Let's dive into Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Before I get into my review, I did forget to mention right off the bat there that this will be a spoiler review for the movie, so for those of you who haven't seen it yet, you're getting out to the theater over Memorial Day weekend to do it, go ahead and save this video for once you've seen the movie and come back to let me know what you thought about the 8th installment into arguably the greatest franchise in movie history. Starting with the story, I do agree that the first hour or so of the movie is rather expedition heavy, but it didn't bother me in the slightest. You still get those early Mission Impossible action scenes, and of course, Tom sprinting like his life depends on it, and McHugh, he crafted some interesting callbacks and connections to keep me interested. But I was also locked in early in this one because we lost our guy Luther within that first hour. I thought it was going to be Benji, but it does make more sense that it's Luther because he's been there longer, and that line towards the end of Dead Reckoning, the closer someone gets to you, the harder it is to keep them alive. It was a bittersweet death, honestly, because he was sick in the beginning of this movie, and seemingly he was on his way out. Luther, that is, not the great Ving Rhames, I hope not at least, but, he got to go out as a hero in this movie, and he dropped his iconic Phineas Freak line one more time. Then, and I'm jumping around now, going out of order, but sticking with the big three, Benji's gunshot wound had my butthole clenched into another dimension. Like I said, I thought he was cooked going into this one, and so I was perked up on the edge of my seat basically the entire final hour of this movie. But shifting back to something more on the fun side, I love that they brought back Ralph Saxon's Dunlow from the first movie. I thought it was fascinating how they tied the entity back into those first three movies specifically, with Dunlow, of course, and him being key to figuring out where the sub is, and he was warning the CIA about the entity and what the entity is, and also with Ethan stealing the rabbit's foot, which turned out to be like the base of the entity from Mission Impossible 3, it was great. In fact, I loved how it's pretty much God versus anti-God here, and Ethan Hunt's not God, but he's been playing God quite a bit in this series with the whole, can't let my teammates die, and the devastation when it does happen. So it was just a fascinating approach to this movie for quite possibly his final boss. However, the tension that McHugh crafts at the end of this movie, like the final hour, I could even, no, I will give it the final hour and a half of the movie is just insane. Between the plane sequence with Ethan and Gabriel and the nuclear vault sequence with Benji and the rest of the team in there and stopping the entity, it was simply peak Mission Impossible in my opinion. It's where Tom and McHugh truly delivered on that trust me one last time. Then one last thing, sticking with the end of the movie, it's 100%, no, 1000% open-ended, and in my opinion, there's just no way this was the last Mission Impossible movie. Maybe they take a break, McHugh and Tom that is. Tom has certainly earned it, and so has Ethan Hunt, but he will return, mark my words. 8, it's just a weird number to end on, and he's not dead in this, so I refuse to believe the franchise is dead, and I'm here for as many of these movies as the dynamic duo Tom and McHugh want to make. Anyway, I want to shift my focus to the cast here and start with the big three as Tom. He was great as he always is. Ving Rhames, he delivered a strong, and I mean like emotionally strong performance, and I loved his voiceover towards the end of the movie, and I think this might just be my favorite Simon Pegg performance in the franchise, even though, he's not all jokes like he is when he comes back from hacking the elevator in, what is that, in Ghost Protocol? Is that the Burj Khalifa one? But it's hilarious Simon Pegg. This one, it's more of an emotional Simon Pegg. He really delivered it in the tension department, and like I said, he had me on the edge of my seat for that final hour. Part of that credit does deserve to go to Pom Klementieff too, though, as she returned and took a step up in this movie when the script called for her to do so. She had a lot more to do, and she's become one of those actors where I really fixate on their eyes while they're performing because they're just so expressive. She's up there with the likes of, Ivana Sakno, who was Shin in the Ahsoka series, and then Robert Pattinson, who I really think that shined when he was Batman with the cowl on. It was so great, but she's up there with them now in that regard. Then there were two performances that weren't, necessarily bad, but I personally found disappointing. And the first, it really sucked because it's Haley Atwell and I love her, but I was hoping she and Tom would kind of build on the chemistry they had from Dead Reckoning, and I actually ended up thinking it got worse in this movie. But to be fair, nobody's ever going to be Rebecca Azilsa Faust in my eyes or in Tom's eyes. I get Tom's obsession there. Then the other one, and this one was less surprising because I felt the same way about him in Dead Reckoning, the previous movie, but Issa Morales is just such an underwhelming villain. He has an unintentionally hilarious scene in the plane sequence, but I mean, I guess I can spoil it. It's his death. It's hilarious the way he just slams his head after he's taunting Ethan, but he's gonna go down as the most disappointing and my least favorite villain in this franchise. Back to the good though, I loved Angela Bassett's performance in her return to Mission Impossible. She brings such a great energy and presence to the war room bunker that those scenes, that could have very well dragged this movie down for me, don't end up doing so at all, and it's all because of her, if you ask me. Then out of all the newcomers, I thought there was only one that truly stood out, and well, to be quite honest, one that was only good, and that was Tremel Tillman. He fit perfectly into this franchise, and his delivery of that, you want to poke the bear, you're in the right place, or what did he say? You want to poke the bear, you're with the right guy. Whatever he said along those lines, it was awesome, and I hope when they make Mission Impossible 9, he's a part of Ethan's team. Alright, before I dive into the action, the best part of all Mission movies, I did want to mention the score just really quick. Outside of, the iconic beat that we all know and love, I've never really found the scores to be a strength for this franchise, and that did remain the same here, but it's not even like an unfortunately situation. It's fine, it's used well in situations, but it's nothing that you're going to write home about, and it's nothing that you're going to remember after watching these movies. And I don't know, it's not a bad thing. I've just always kind of found it weird that these movies didn't have great scores every time. But let's get into the action because I love this movie's fights and stunts. The initial fight with Gabriel is the weakest of the movie, and it's still a ton of fun, just like this franchise. I say it's one of the greatest franchises because it is. The lowest score I have for a movie, I believe it's a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10, but the rest is uphill from there, and the fights in these movies are the same, especially because it leads straight to the first Tom Cruise sprint to save Luther, to no avail, of course, and unfortunately, but it just never gets old. Then you've got the subsequence and the whole underwater thing that Tom Cruise does for this movie, and I can't even wrap my mind around what he does in the scene. Like, I know they're just working, well, I say just, but they're working in water tanks here, and I don't want to shrug it off, but still, he's down there, he's spinning around in it, he's diving deep as fuck, and he's even going without the oxygen tank to finish it off for what seemed like a pretty decent amount of time. I don't know how else to describe it other than pure insanity. Now, I do think that sequence is probably going to be a lot of people's favorites from the movie, but for me, this plane sequence was so good. In fact, it might be my favorite sequence from the entire franchise because it's everything that I love about these movies. It's straitjacket levels of insane, and in all seriousness, we might need to lock Tom up in one before he kills himself doing these stunts because it's crazy, but it's got the comedy that's born out of the tension, specifically here, Gabriel's death again with that part, and also watching Tom dangle from the airplanes and everything climbing up with the people being all surprised, like, oh yeah, well, this isn't new for Ethan, but it was crazy. Then there was also the shootout at the nuclear vault, which that led to the plane going out of order again here, but it was fun too. But I hated it because of Benji getting shot, like I said, which again, just my worst nightmare going into Final Reckoning was losing him. So this final hour after was just nauseating concern and intensity for me, but that's what makes it so good. And so that's going to do it for my review of Ethan Hunt's alleged final mission. I loved it. It's in my top 3 for the franchise, but I want to know what you guys thought about the movie. So drop your thoughts and rating down in the comments below and make sure you have a great day.